America, you claim to have the greatest army history has known. You may have the numbers and weapons, but your soldiers lack the will and resolve. Still scarred from their defeat.
That was one of the terror group's newest videos created by what the Washington Post calls the ISIS propaganda machine. A recent article describes a culture where media operatives are often treated better than soldiers on the battlefield. The Washington Post piece compares the production of these prolific videos to a medieval reality show. Greg Miller from the Post co-wrote the article. He's here with us now from D.C. As countries ramp up their air campaigns against ISIS, we're getting an unprecedented look inside the terror group's vast and sophisticated media operation.
America, you claim to have the greatest army history has known. You may have the numbers and weapons, but your soldiers lack the will and resolve. Still scarred from their...
That was one of the terror group's newest videos created by what the Washington Post calls the ISIS propaganda machine. A recent article describes a culture where media operatives are often treated better than soldiers on the battlefield. The Washington Post piece goes on to compare the production of these prolific videos to a medieval reality show. Greg Miller from the Post co-wrote the article, and he's here with us now from D.C. Greg, good to talk to you. When we're talking about who's really in charge here and how media people are getting compensated, what did you find when you talked to some of these ISIS defectors?
What we found was really fascinating. It's the media teams in the Islamic State, the propaganda units are sort of a professional class within the organization, and they get better housing, they get better cars, they get better pay. One of the defectors we interviewed had actually been a cameraman for the Islamic State for about a year. He lived in a villa, he got a Toyota four-wheel drive truck, he got about $700 a month, which was multiples of what ordinary fighters get. And those, that just sort of reflects the priority that propaganda represents for the Islamic State.
And how important are they when the big events that grab global headlines unfold? For instance, the execution of captives.
Well, I mean, a lot of these events are completely staged and choreographed for the propaganda team's benefit and to serve as vehicles of getting the Islamic State's message across. So, I mean, these are horrible things that happen, but they are staged and scripted almost directly by propaganda units. I mean, one of the defectors we talked to was a fighter who described scenes inside Syria in which he witnessed a public beheading in which a propaganda team shows up with cue cards that a public official for the Islamic State is expected to read from on camera before the beheading, and then they have the executioner raise camera angles on the blade. And this is not just an isolated thing, this is just their approach to fights, to all manner of events inside the Islamic State.
How effective are they at recruiting based on the level of the media that they're producing?
Well, I mean, what started us on this project was, you know, the repeated descriptions by U.S. intelligence officials of the Islamic State as the most sophisticated media and propaganda terrorist entity they had ever encountered, and we really wanted to try to get at the mechanics of that. And the effectiveness shows through in the numbers. I mean, there are 30,000 foreign fighters at latest count who have gone into Syria and Iraq since the start of that civil war. Most of them have come over the past year or two to join the Islamic State. Propaganda is this organization's lifeblood. It is their source of recruits, their source of resources, and that's why it's so important. And
when you compare what they do media-wise and social media-wise to what, say, Al-Qaeda has done, what's the difference?
They've completely upended the Al-Qaeda model. I mean, Al-Qaeda was always known for these sort of lectures from bin Laden or Zawahiri, looking into a camera before some blank backdrop. Messages would come out once every couple of months at most. I mean, the Islamic State, it's an ongoing avalanche. They are producing propaganda pieces every single day.
Yeah, and ask most people around the globe, which would you rather sit through, a sermon or an action film?
No, and U.S. officials that we talked to said, look, they described the al-Qaeda approach as a dissertation versus the Islamic State's approach as a soundbite, and a branded soundbite. One U.S. official we talked to said, you know, they're so disciplined about their brand that it's almost corporate. It's almost like Nike.
Hey, Greg, why are the defectors leaving ISIS? What's coaxing them away from that group?
I mean, one of the things that came up in these interviews is that there's these two realities. There's this image that Islamic State cultivates in its propaganda. These defectors said that that is not what they found when they got there. I mean, they were frustrated by some of its aspects of its agenda, including the extent to which it's fighting other Muslim militant groups. But almost all of them also just became at odds with somebody inside the Islamic State and began to really fear for their safety. Several of them had been threatened that they would be killed. Their families were threatened. I mean, they just panicked and got out any way they could.
Greg Miller from the Washington Post, it's really great to talk to you. Great article. Thank you.
Thank you so much.